Hello, junior trendwatchers. Welcome to Make. I think the most fun step of intervention design, because in this step you can pruts, and I'm going to explain what prutsen is later on in this presentation. So the process of this step is that you are going to translate your fictional world into a prototype. And that means that you really need to know what the essence of your story is. What do you want to bring across to your target audience? And of course also, who is your target audience? First you gather ideas, then translate them into a product or service. And that'll be a prototype that you're going to build. And then you're going to evaluate the prototype with your target audience. Normally you would do this as long as necessary, but of course we only have kind of a week or a week and a half. So I suggest that you come up with only a low fidelity prototype and a high fidelity prototype. I'm going to explain both. But the most important thing is that you kind of let go of all the thinking. Just pruts. According to Guido Stompf, one of my colleagues in Holland, he says prutsen is het nieuwe innoveren. So tinkering is the new innovation. And I think he's absolutely right. I think that it's really important to use your hands and to come up with physical ideas instead of only kind of being in your head and thinking about concepts, etc. And that is also in line with what Pippi Langkous once said. Maybe that's a generational gap, but Pippi Langkous, of course, is a long, long time ago. But I think the quote, I've never done it, so I think I'm quite good at it, is the essence of this prototype phase. That's the essence if you look at what the prototype phase is. But there is also an essence in what you're going to do in this phase. And that's kind of the message that you want to bring across to people now. So you thought about a fictional world and a story in the near future. And now you're going to try to translate this back to the now. Because you've kind of, if you follow the process, thought about a subculture, you explored the subculture, you thought about all the interesting trends that you've spotted in subculture, and then you've came up with one trend where you kind of think, okay, this could be a really important kind of step in the near future, and this could become something that is much bigger than only this subculture. This could be kind of become the mainstream. So you have to kind of come up with that message. And I think we've already kind of did a little exercise on Wednesday, yesterday, I'm recording this on Thursday, where you also thought about, okay, but what's kind of the message of the story that you came up with. Also, think about the target audience. Who do you want to reach with that message? And everybody is not a good answer because there isn't a product that is really good that is targeted for everybody. Think about that. Okay, let's move on to what prototyping actually is. In the ideate phase, you come up with a lot of kind of different ideas. And I think it's really important to be really open in this. So brainstorm, this is not a good idea is of course never an answer. So really kind of take notes of everything that you come up with. And then try to come up with the ideas that are, in your case, the best kind of vessels to communicate your message. Also use your fictional world. So what could your protagonist use to affect the resolution? How could the protagonist make sure that the complications will be overcome? What products or services does she or he need to really do that? So I think really broad. And then you have to go to the experiment phase, where you will be, of course, prutsing. Well, prutsing is not a Dutch word, but let's use thinkering for that. So an idea isn't enough, and concept isn't enough. So you really need to make sure that you come up with a physical prototype or a service that, of course, can also be digital. In this kind of way of thinking, a digital product is also physical in a specific way. And kind of don't hold back. So just play, make stuff, experiment. There was no wrong here. So just do cool things. Prototyping, according to the definition on Wikipedia, which is kind of quite good, comes from Greek. So protos is first, typos is impression, and then you could say that a prototype is kind of a first impression, a primitive kind of model of the end product that you want to kind of achieve. So I think that's quite clear. According to, for example, Adobe, and you all know Adobe, I think, because you're using it, a prototype is much more a simulation. And I really love this definition. So the prototype as kind of an expression of a design intent. Well, I really love this because it gives kind of a new kind of way of understanding what a prototype is. It is, in essence, a simulation. It is a simulation of the idea that you have. And because it's a simulation, you can also use it to gather information with your target audience about if your simulation is working or that it kind of doesn't resonate with your target audience. And then we have two types of prototypes. So we have the low fidelity and the high fidelity. Both are really important and also as important as they can be. A low fidelity prototype is really kind of useful if you want to test, for example, the basics of your design. But I will come to that later, of course. Essential for now is that a prototype envisions your end product, but it isn't the end product itself. That's really important to understand. So I'm not asking you to come up with a fully working functional product. It is a prototype. So if you look, for example, at low fidelity prototypes, they are used to evaluate the basics of what you want to achieve. So does the functionality work? Is the intention of the idea clear for the target audience? So it isn't about the aesthetics or the visual aspects of your prototype. It's all about the message. It's all about the interaction. It's about the materials, the tech, the medium. Do those things work? And of course, I think you all know, you can also think about these kind of stuff, but thinking is really limited because you have to experience most of the things yourself. So that's what prototyping is for. If you have done the low fidelity prototypes and make sure that you really know by using the prototypes what your target audience wants, then you can come up with the high fidelity prototype. And the high fidelity prototype is a really good representation of the end product, where the functionality and the looks are quite similar, but it doesn't really work. So that's, I think, is important. A high fidelity prototype doesn't work. It's not an end product, but it is kind of aesthetically, but also functional, really close to the end product. And of course, high fidelity prototypes also evaluated with your audience, because you want to know what your audience thinks about that high fidelity prototype, because it's so close to kind of the end result. And then, of course, the evaluate phase. That's what I already mentioned. You are going to evaluate your products with your target audience. And that's a different thing than just a test, because you do this on 3 levels. The levels that we've been working with, I think, the whole semester already. Micro, meso, and macro. So you have kind of this message that you want to bring across, and you must make sure, and that's I think much more the macro level, that your target audience understands this because your product or your service, your prototype, um, is so good that it kind of already let your target audience think about that message. And you can do this, of course, in a couple of different ways. And you have to kind of decide what your kind of strategy is. Do you want people to be, well, maybe enthusiastic about something? Do you want them to have kind of a shock effect, etc., etc.? So that's also up to you to think about. And that's the intervention. So in the end, the main goal of the intervention design method as an approach within speculative design is to challenge, well, not to challenge, but to give kind of the target audience the idea that they have to kind of challenge their own value system. You show them something and it's so kind of not in line with their values that they have to think about their own value system. And that's what it's all about. It's really difficult. Most designers aren't really doing this. Speculative design is also still kind of a new approach. Most designers are still kind of focused on only the micro and meso level. So speculative design is difficult. So don't be disappointed if you show your low fidelity prototype and in the end your high fidelity prototype to your target audience and it doesn't resonate. That's just, well, a thing that can happen. Normally you have the time to iterate and to change, of course, also your prototype. With a week and a half, we don't have this amount of time. So be kind of also nice to yourself. So have fun, and I would say lekker prutsen,